It's great to meet you. Really happy to have you on the podcast and that you made the time. How are you
Thank you.
doing?
Yeah. Good. How are you? Thank you for making the time.
Yes, no, it's amazing. Especially that you're now back in New York and the time difference.
Great.
So I would love to talk about something that is not the obvious question that you might get asked all the time. But let's talk about what is the difference between music and science for you? Because I have seen that you do a couple of things with music. Not that you're a musician, as far as I have
Terrible
understood.
musician. Yeah.
But still, what is the difference between musicians and working with scientists?
Actually, it's a great question, and immediately pops to mind. I think is less the difference is more the similarities. One point on the science, but more than that, a lot of my friends are artists of different kinds, including downtown New York artists and classical musicians. And I used to be on the board of a amazing chamber orchestra called the Knights Chamber Orchestra. There were a bunch of kids who were at Juilliard, which is a top music school in New York. They would hang out, and then eventually they formed the chamber orchestra, and they tour in Europe. I've seen them at the Musikverein. They are a resident orchestra at Carnegie Hall, and I think creativity is the common thread. And also, if you ever not too many, I don't have too many scientist friends because I have some great ones, but if you get too many scientists together in a room, it quickly becomes very, very boring. So I love having friends who are creative in different disciplines, and so many pop to mind. As a kid growing up, I would always go to classical concerts and philharmonic halls in different cities where I live. And I'd usually close my eyes and just listen to the music. And it'd be very transportive. I remember once I would rush from the lab at Rockefeller during grad school to Lincoln Center, always just making it in time. I'd still be thinking about my work. And it was a milestone concert. I think there 13,000 or 14,000 concerts, something like that. And right, leaving the hall for the reception, for the intermission, a reporter put a mic in front of me and said, "What were you thinking?" And I was imagining cells in a petri dish and, adding genes to them, and they were trying to resist it. And I was babbling all this into the radio, and just it's a very for me, music and color they really transport me. The scientific thing that comes to mind, there are actually songbirds that learn a song every year, and there's some that learn one song and that's it. They don't have the repertoire to keep adding new songs. And that's been drilled down to a genetic difference where the songbirds that learn a song every year have a different version of a gene than the ones that are stuck. And one of my classmates at Rockefeller, she studied in a neuroscience lab, and she found a gene that makes mice learn faster. And so she's actually checking people with more creativity or less creativity. Do they have different versions of this gene? I think
Yeah.
it'd be very interesting to look at creative artists, scientists, and see how much are we like songbirds? How much plasticity do we have? How much are we rigid in what we've learned?
It's cool. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. For me, music is like right now, at least, is not a big part of my life. Obviously, like when I'm driving in the car or something, I'm listening to music. I was a musician. I played trumpet for 24 years when I was young, but since then, like never. And I'm like still a typical German engineer from my brain perspective. My brain is still Excel tables. And I know like music is a lot of math as well, but I was never good in math, so I stick more to the engineering only.
Tried to play violin, and I love I have zero talent, and I was one of the worst kids I think the second to worst kid in our high school orchestra. And whenever we do a concert and we get to the fast parts, I wouldn't want to mess things up for everyone. So I would just lift my bow above the violin and play along with no sound.
Talking about that, you have been living in different countries and grew up in different countries. Where did you go to school?
I was born in Tehran. I went to an American Montessori there and then after my family left Iran, we were in Karachi for a while. I went to private school there. Then London for a couple years, Hong Kong for a couple years, um, Manhattan, and then the suburbs of Princeton in New Jersey before moving for grad school to Manhattan.
Yeah, Manhattan is like is what you call home today, or
Uh, it used to be when I first came to the city, I thought I would never leave, but and it New York maybe still has, but it for me it really felt like it had a lot of energy when I first went to grad school. But recently I explored the UAE and I really think it's electric there. There are, grocery stores that are 24/7. There are restaurants that are open till 4 a.m. Starbucks is 24 hours. Not that you need all of those things, but it shows the amount of life activity, work activity.
yeah, yeah. I've never been, and this is definitely on my list to go.
Yeah, I recommend it. The population there are about 10% who are local Emiratis, and the rest of the population are people who are coming to the country for opportunities, and also people who are imported because the UAE knows that it doesn't even call it human resources; it calls it human capital. They know
Yeah,
that to create new sectors, to create new projects, they need to bring in a lot of experts and a lot of workers from different countries. And interestingly, even laborers, like in the US, laborers are blamed for taking jobs, even though no one usually wants to do those jobs. In the UAE, they welcome everyone. If you can find a job, you can stay. But no one's turned away. If you can hustle, no matter at what level. And I got to know many taxi drivers, many uh, listening to their stories of how they would start in a vegetable market washing fruit and then it became a taxi driver and what they want to do. There's this total mobility there.
let's talk about Abu Dhabi golden visa. Let's start with that story. How did you get to the golden visa, and then we go all the way back to your invention and like the IPO and all the other business topics as well.
So originally, UAE was not on my radar. After my family left Iran, I had never been back to the Middle East since I was a little kid. And, Dubai was not at all a destination I was interested in. I thought it was a place where tacky people went for vacations. And I'm bad with geography. I thought Abu Dhabi was in Ethiopia. I had no awareness of it. A friend of a friend was visiting. She lives in Dubai, and she said, based on what I'm doing, I should really come and explore UAE. They want to start non-oil sectors, including biotechnology. And she convinced me to come visit. I stayed with her. She set up some meetings and I got to meet people in the sector and thought about it and decided, okay, this is a real adventure. They're not looking to start a company or invest in a company, but start an entire biotech sector from the ground up.
How did that then lead to the golden visa?
I didn't originally want a golden visa. It was just you can go to the UAE, but my trips would be really extended, more than a month. And if I'd have a date where I would fly out, people would request meetings right on that date. So the trips were beyond the visa period, the automatic visa period. And every time I would get fined. So I spoke with people about how do I get a normal work visa through my UAE company. And they said, oh, we should actually get you a golden visa. And there are many paths in the UAE. You can get a golden visa if you're an investor, if you own property, if you're an artist, if you're a scientist. And they were first suggesting for me to get it through the researcher path, but it wouldn't fit the boxes. You had to have a publication record, and we never published our technology. So after months of trying these different paths, but I was just not fitting, they created a new category, which is the Inventor Golden Visa. I'm the first recipient. And that process took a single day from nominating me to you have to get medical exams, certain diseases that they screen for, eye tests, fingerprints, all of that. That entire process took one day from nomination to getting the visa.
That's nuts. Like one day. In other countries, that would take like 5 years.
Actually, I had given up because we were exploring these other paths. And I went to the visa office to say I want to get a regular visa via my company. And I needed some questions answered. So I called the folks who had wanted to help. And I said, look, I'm here. I'm just getting a normal visa. And they said, no, 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 hang on a minute. And then the sped up process started.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your invention, Chromovert. So you have been doing your PhD, and as far as I have seen, during your PhD, or was it before already, you have found something.
It was during my PhD. I started my PhD when I was 19 years old. So I was pretty young. I was growing up during that time. And I would take on the projects that really interested me. These were often the hardest projects that I would come across. And some of them required a lot of tedious work. 8 years is a long time to get to do your PhD. And the dean's office was pressuring me to finish. And the main project I was working on just tanked. I was creating cells that were engineered to have many genes. The whole thing just flopped, and the starting point was a cell I bought from a vendor that was supposed to be pre-engineered with certain genes already. And I called them and I said, "Look, I need to reorder these cells to restart this process." They said, "Sorry, there was a quality control problem with these cells. We don't longer sell it." So I was at zero. I had spent a lot of time. Everything had just crashed. And I desperately thought of how do I speed up this process? And that was the birth of this technology. It was a thought experiment that I thought could speed up creating these cells.
Yeah. And then what happened?
The university filed the patents, and we spent about 2 years negotiating rights to obtain a license to this invention to start a company. And at one point, they said, "This is a crazy idea. It will never work. We shouldn't have filed the patent. If you pay us the money we sunk into the legal fees, you can buy it." So we bought the invention, and my professor and I started a company around it, and we developed it and got the technology to work from an idea to a product.
That's cool. So what does the technology, for someone that has no idea about like anything like scientific, what does the idea do? What does Chromovert from a technology perspective do?
So you've heard of CRISPR. CRISPR is a way to engineer genes inside the body. Chromovert is a way to craft cells inside the petri dish. So usually in drug discovery, you try to make a cell in the lab that mimics human disease, and that is your detector to test many compounds to see which compound blocks a certain gene, and that's a drug candidate you then develop. So the cells in the petri dish are your detectors. Right now, traditional methods, it's very hard to create a cell that accurately mimics human disease in the lab dish. And our process improves that step. So we can make cells that are better models of human disease in the petri dish.
Which means, if I translate that, is if I want to develop a new drug that is, let's say, curing a disease, I can do that faster.
That's right. Like the industry average failure rate for the drug discovery process is 98%. And drug candidates fail at many stages. They fail in the lab stages. They can fail when you take a compound into animal tests, or they can fail in the clinical trials. But the starting point is using a cell as your detector to find that initial spark. And if that cell is not valid, if it's defective, it's not a good foundation to start on. So we improve that early discovery point to discover compounds that have a higher likelihood of success through this very long and expensive process.
Yeah. So, business wise, I'm just curious, why did the university then say, hey, this is never going to work?
I can't speak for them. I'm not sure what went into their calculus. I think at the time people were this is a this is a platform technology, a discovery technology. People, I think, were focused on compounds, initial, molecules that might be drugs. I think that's one thing. The other thing is my idea was that there were several aspects that were already in the literature in very different fields. And my idea was to combine them in a coherent sequence of steps. And there was no proof that it would work. It was like, let's say you don't have a bicycle, but you have a wheel, you have a chain, you have handlebars, and they were in different places. And someone said, "Hey, let me put this together and start pedaling, and I'll move." So once you do it, it's obvious. But when it was taking things from different fields and combining them, it felt far fetched.
So then, together with your professor, you built a company.
Yes.
And what happened? Like, how did you start the company? How did you develop it going forward? And like, how big did it get?
It was definitely not a straight line because we never had venture capital funding. We never had investors. So there wasn't a cash cushion. There were many bumps. Our funding was from customers tied to delivering results where traditional technologies had failed. And definitely very bumpy. There were many times where my professor would say, we're going to go belly up. We were very close to going belly up. The main outcome was taking this idea to make better cells and showing that for some of the most difficult biological targets, it actually did work where other technologies failed. And because we didn't have investors, I now own the validated platform technology.
That's cool. So that means you took this, you developed it, and it was all financed in the end by real customers that paid for the results they got.
Correct. About $150 million of customer funded projects. The first company really incubated the method, did projects for people. It was not an engine that industrialized the technology to scale it. There were no venture capital partners, pharmaceutical strategic partners. That's what now I'm trying to build in the second iteration in my second company.
That's interesting. So you have built it, you got it to 150 million, and now you're literally looking into commercializing it even to the next level with a new company.
Exactly. Like in the past, we did projects for our clients. Now I have a method that we can show, there's a demand for, it does things that are not possible. It's automated, it's debugged, it's like a conveyor belt system. Let's now set up an industrialized technology around, industrialized operations around it and scale it up.
Why didn't you do that with the first company? I'm just curious. And how does Abu Dhabi play a role in this as well?
I think the first company just developed in a certain way, and when you have a lot of clients that have a lot of funding, you get absorbed by the projects that are important for them. So there wasn't room to think about in-house development of the method. There wasn't the capital to do that. It was really project focused for our clients. So the new setup lets us breathe and think about how do we do this internally with strategic partners who are focused on the technology.
And if we look at that, how do you develop this now? So let's say, what can it be in the future if we compare that to something that people that listen to the podcast know? I mean, I understand you have the technology, you have the methodology, how you can leverage it. What can it help do in the world? And what are other companies that do similar things or other things that can be as big as this?
Right. So maybe one more piece of background before I dive in there. So we went after the most difficult, the high hanging fruit. For instance, with Nestle, we went after the biology of salt taste. There's lots of sweet ingredients, saccharin, stevia, all of that. But we cracked the biology of human salt taste, a cell that's like a little salty tasting taste bud in a dish. We found the first natural ingredients that tickle this system and make salt taste more salty. On the other hand, we found a non-addictive pain drug candidate that the FDA fast-tracked and that has gone past clinical phase 1 trials. So from salt taste to pain blocking, it's a true platform. What's different about what I want to do, most therapeutics companies, they pick the indication. I work in diabetes. I work in cancer. Here's a gene that's important. I'm going to target it. I'll find molecules, but you don't know are those molecules going to work. You just have to push them and do your best and push them to the funnel. And we have the 98% failure rates. What I want to do is there's a family of genes, biological targets called GPCRs. There's 400 of them. About 50% of FDA drugs target GPCRs. So they're a treasure trove to find drugs. We worked with about 3 dozen. We can show we can get at them better than traditional methods. We made these in a matter of months. What I'd like to do is go after all 400. It's not to say let's make 400 drugs, but it creates a funnel. You can have 400 targets. For which ones do you get good compounds? For which ones are they safe in the lab? For which ones is there patentability? Based on the compounds that check off the most boxes, you say, okay, here are the 3, 4, 5 compounds that are staged for success. At that point, use clinical input, business input to say, these are the few we're going to cherry pick to really focus on, do pre-IND enabling studies and license to pharma. But because you have all 400, you can keep cycling and discovering more and more drugs. So what I'd like to set up is very different than a traditional biotech, which works on one disease, one target. It's about creating a drug discovery funnel.
So it's like you said, it's a true platform that is enabling others with what you do to develop drugs as well.
Absolutely, because for instance, we can crank out these 400 medically important genes, but we're not subject matter experts. So if we have the cells that discover good candidate compounds, we then need to collaborate with the biotechs who are experts in this disease or that disease to complete the knowledge base.
That's interesting.
Also, I think in addition to UAE, China is a very interesting venue because last year, about 30% of drug candidates that were licensed to pharma were discovered in China. 5 years ago it was 0. And the reason is China has made it possible to take candidate drugs into human trials faster. And until you get human data behind a candidate drug, it's just a hypothesis. So if we have an engine that bubbles out many, many drug candidates, I'd be very interested to see how do I plug into the Chinese clinical trial ecosystem to see, can we cost effectively get as fast as possible human data behind these compounds to see which ones are real, which ones should we really be focusing.
And what you would then do is you then go like more specific on those ones, or would you then collaborate with others, like you mentioned?
Both. I think both are options. I think maybe there would be 1 or 2 or a small number where we commit to developing them in-house. But I think it would be great to form collaborations, strategic collaborations with pharma and biotech who are specialized in specific diseases and join forces. And if we can create detectors for hundreds of programs, why not do that? You know, it's like the Human Genome Project. People use sequence little fragments of DNA, but this was one day automated and we did the whole genome. Right now we're going after drugs one at a time, but why not hundreds at a time or thousands at a time?
How does AI play a role in this?
I use AI all the time. I prefer Claude. It's a multiplier of your creativity, of your data. AI needs good quality data to be its most reliable. Right now, drug discovery data has a 98% failure rate. So the AI drug discovery efforts that are based on that, garbage in, garbage out. But if you have better cells that give better data and you have this in volume to feed that into AI and to get the power of AI to take those compounds further, figure out what tweaks should we make so that a compound hits this receptor but not the other 50. That's where I think the two approaches can really complement.
If we translate like the possibility of what are examples that you could support in curing, if we look at the bigger picture, what's the impact to society, what's the impact to people, with what you're doing? Because I understand the clinical trials will take a couple of years and so on, but if we look at the bigger picture, where do you think that can lead to?
I think if we had the full resources to crank out all these cells that, there are entire biotechs working on one GPCR. If we can crank out all 400 and get interesting compounds to all of them and then form collaborations where we feed these compounds into companies that exist that are working to develop drugs in their therapeutic areas, we could maybe unleash a torrent of much more effective drug discovery. Why are there just a handful of FDA approved compounds? Because everyone's struggling with clinical trials that are very error prone. We could put that on much better footing.
So which means you can build the foundation, and the foundation is way stronger, and like in the end you're shorten the time span when it comes to success rate, or you increase the success rate.
Both of those things. On the shortening time, usually when people have cells and you do high throughput screening, that's when you test thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of compounds. Usually those cells do not immediately work in animal models. You have to go through rounds of chemical optimization. In our hands, the cells from the primary screens work directly in animal models and in some cases with the taste examples directly in human. So if your cells are predictive, you cut out rounds of optimization. And the second thing, because they're more predictive, it should count where it really matters in the ultimate success in humans. If our cells are keyed into human biology more accurately, then the compounds we discover at the earliest stages have a higher likelihood of technical and regulatory success.
So in the end, it's good for, I mean, even for humanity, as faster it goes, as faster like diseases will be cured, which obviously is helpful for everyone.
And that's why I'm very attracted and very impressed by what China has done and is doing and what the UAE wants to do. Some people look at this as competition and threats, but it's great. It's great if there are other venues that are developing things that can help humans, that can save lives, improve lives. It's great if the Middle East, right now outside of Israel, there is no biotech center. The Arab world has so much oil money. If it would put a drop of its oil wealth in biotechnology, it could create an entire new sector. There are many technologies like mine that are platforms that are validated, and it takes money to scale them. If a place like UAE or Saudi cherry picked six, seven, a dozen platform technologies and funded them, some will fail, but it could launch an entire new discovery sector. If China has figured out how to find out which drugs work in humans faster than the FDA, great. That's an amazing accomplishment, and we should try to do better. But it's great that other places are making strides.
If we go to Abu Dhabi, so you went there and you have seen there's development going on, which you can leverage for your idea and for your platform. What is different if we go to specifics? Like you're having like 3 foods, like we said with Boston, but in the end, it's like the U.S. and the Middle East, and now you talk about China as well. What is the detailed differences when you look into your platform and the future when it comes to these different worlds?
I think each venue has different strengths and weaknesses or different challenges. For instance, in UAE, one of the things that's daunting to create a new biotech sector is the workforce is limited. There's a limited number of people who are Harvard level trained PhDs and postdocs. There's a limited lab space that's suitable for this kind of work. Also, the country is transitioning from a purchase economy to a knowledge-based economy. In a purchase economy, something costs this much, you pay 10 times more, you can get it faster or the best version. In a knowledge base, you can't always do that. And I think the, I think the country is transitioning to adding knowledge-based sectors, but it takes work and deliberate intention. In Boston, there's just so, I find it a little bit boring because it feels like the whole town is involved in biotech. You go to a restaurant and all the tables next to you are talking biotech. But that momentum, that connectivity, that community is really, they say Kendall Square, where MIT is Harvard is the most innovative square mile on the planet because there's the most innovations, the most patents, and that's its strength. I think it's not just this workforce. They have so many talented people trained at the best university abroad and in China. And now they are systematically making better processes for FDA type regulations.
If we look at the business where it is right now, so what are the activities that you're focusing on right now? And where do you see it going over the next, let's say, half year, 2 years?
Because I own the technology, I'm very open. I can be very creative in structuring a deal. What drives me is to make the biggest impact for science and medicine. That was what gravitated me to Abu Dhabi, because if I would succeed in creating a company there, it could maybe help spark the biotech sector. That's exciting. But I spent a good part of 2, 3 years focusing on the UAE, and they haven't really plunged in. They're looking at a dozen different non-oil sectors, and biotech has a lot of challenges to solve. So they haven't yet dived into it. And I decided I couldn't just wait forever. I'm in touch. I've been there twice since May. I keep the contacts there. But about a year ago, I started focusing on the US. Whereas in Abu Dhabi, I was looking at a government joint venture where they would invest and own a company, and I would add the technology and the team. In the US, I'm starting discussions with venture capital groups. It's also challenging because I don't have a history with venture capital groups. I raised all my funding from customers. So I'm going to them as an unknown entity, and most of them look for compounds, not platforms. And so it's very difficult to have discussions starting from scratch when I'm looking for a lot of money to scale this up. But I'm making progress, especially with tech bio space.
What's quite interesting and for me, I have never had funding similar to you as well. Like I've built my businesses and financed them myself and figured it out with customers paying. Um, that's for me the biggest validation, like you said in between as well. Like if you have customers that are paying you, that's the best thing that you can have for a technology or for any company that you build. So that should be already the validation to give you money. But it seems like it's not that easy.
I think if it were easy, I wouldn't be interested in it. I like
Yeah.
difficult puzzles, and I lose interest when things are too easy. Like someone else can do it. It's someone else can tie the bow. I like putting the whole thing together. And one interesting thing that has come up, usually it's me trying to push the idea forward and convince someone. But the Department of War reached out to me, formerly the US Department of Defense, and that discussion, they are moving forward where their interest is in biodefense. So their thought is, if I have a whole array of all these medical targets where people just have one at a time, They would like to develop a dual use biodefense application, which is, let's say you sprinkle chemical warfare toxins and you see which of these targets respond. Well, there's so many FDA drugs to these toxins already. You can then match a warfare toxin with an existing FDA approved drug as an immediate countermeasure. It might be a mixture of FDA approved drugs, but having the whole array of targets is what would enable it.
That's cool. Should that also means it goes the other way around? Like in case you don't know exactly which one is working, like you just said, it's you can test which one is working and then can just apply the right drug for it.
Exactly. And it might be a mixture of drugs,
Yeah.
right? And having
Yeah.
having the whole array of targets is the key to unlocking what is the combination that works. Of course, that same data can be used to develop, in the wrong hands, can be used to develop more potent toxins.
Yeah.
And when these discussions started with Department of War, the US and many countries have signed treaties a long time ago stating that we would not develop worse toxins. But technologies have evolved now, and technologies like mine and others that may be out there could potentially be used to develop even worse toxins. And I think this is the time where countries like the US must be aware of the capabilities that are there to see how do we stay a step ahead. If someone does develop worse toxins, do we have the tools to quickly find antidotes to those?
So if we take an example like COVID, for example, at the time when it broke out, like nobody knew what will help against it. So could you have used your technology at that time to test it, or
There is one application we together with my collaboration partner on that, Don Landry. He was chairman of medicine at Columbia University Medical Center. The salt taste compounds we found are to an ion channel, which is it conducts salt. So wherever salt goes, water follows. And it's also expressed in the lung where it's involved in fluid balance. So one of the reasons people would die from COVID is the lungs would flood up. So there was a call for proposals from the US government for compounds that could maybe clear fluid from the lung. And we submitted the idea that we take these salt taste molecules, but as opposed to food ingredients that you ingest, what if we made inhaled formulations to directly bring them in the lung? That grant application was well reviewed, but it wasn't funded because they were looking for an existing drug that could be turned around without additional clinical trials. That's maybe the closest that I came to COVID. The other area is, our technology is about getting genes into cells, into lab cells. So there are some molecules of COVID that form the sort of the capsule that the virus has. And people try to get cells to produce those things as new vaccine, as ways to develop new vaccines. And because we can make cells with many proteins, our technology has potential there. But unlike drug discovery, where our technology is demonstrated, there's no more adaptation needed. Those applications need more tinkering.
yeah, makes sense. So the drug discovery is the basically the MVP, if you call it. It works. I mean, it's not even MVP anymore. It just works. It's just about scaling it, right?
Absolutely. And I appreciate the chance to share about it because I think, one reason I love being in Boston is that it is such a tight community because we never published, people don't know about this only in the
Yeah.
pilot literature. So meeting with people there, letting them know that, this could potentially transform drug discovery is what I'm up to a lot.
There must be even I mean I've no idea, but there must be investors that are in this field or even outside of this field. They see the opportunity that should should, at least in my eyes, like run after you.
What I'm seeing newly going to these types of events where there's lots of companies, 100 companies in the room with a little poster about their technology. There are thousands of companies out there. I think no one can assess them, right? And each one, you have to learn about the domain. So typically what I've seen is a lot of VC firms have criteria. They say we only invest if you're working in diabetes, if you have a compound that's this far along, that far along. And so that's the only way they can make sense of thousands of opportunities. And we don't fit those criteria because people are looking for compounds, not a discovery method. I think there are VC firms that focus on platforms, but they are much more rare. And what I've heard is a lot of them are in the West Coast, like in Palo Alto, in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm not there, but I'm seeing about reaching out.
Just curious, from a business perspective, what would be an enabler for you from an investment, like money wise?
The two most interesting things that I think could feed into and jumpstart the venture capital are the defense discussions we're having.
Yeah, for
That's a
sure.
need they identified, and those meetings are moving well. I have next week an in-person meeting with DARPA, which is a big research arm of the military. Uh, But in addition, a medical nonprofit reached out to me, and some of these are large organizations, $500 million. And they said, we have a pain point. We're trying to go after this one target. These groups have a lot of academic expert labs, but they're unable to make a cell for this target. So they said, we don't typically fund 100%, we fund 50%. That made me think, what if we get a small number of medical nonprofits where they have all their expert labs, but what we can add is this technology to make a cell to find a compound to feed into their expert labs for collaborative development. So I'm also exploring getting some non-dilutive funding from a couple of these nonprofits.
Hey, that's even better for you because you still own 100%, right?
I'm not concerned about the ownership. Anything to get the ball
Yeah.
moving. And I think the VCs would definitely value the non-dilutive aspect. But if we can, if the nonprofits get certain rights in their field of use and medicines are developed, great. And if whichever way gets this off the ground, this industrialized version off the ground, I'm all for.
So then you have as well, for me always exciting to see what people do. You do LinkedIn lives, which I really love because you talk with or you interview biotech founders. How did this start, and how did you decide to do kind of a mini show and interview people?
It started a few years ago. The impetus was I have friends who do very interesting things, and I wanted to myself learn about it. So I would invite them to chat live, and I'm not good with technical editing. So it wasn't a podcast idea. It was more to just record the conversation and share it. And doing it in LinkedIn Live was the easiest way to do it. Uh, and recently, especially spending more time in Boston and meeting a lot of CEOs where I have very little idea about them, it's making me to learn more about them, thinking to conduct these interviews. People are always excited to be on an interview. They're always open. And I thought, if I am getting to this time with these people, maybe I'll put in some more effort, transition it from a Zoom based system to an in person system. So I've just newly started doing it live in person.
I've seen it. It's great, and it's directly different vibe, obviously.
Yes, thank you. And learning about making shorts and things like this. And there's so many automated ways to help these days.
The interesting thing, obviously, I'm biased because I have a media company. What I like about this, like you get them talking about what they do and try to explain like we do today, because you're people in biotech are not the communicators like in other industries who are shouting everything from the rooftop. They're more like conservative, most of them at least. And I think that helps as well to get more out what the knowledge is, but also like the things, the amazing things like you are doing, but also others in the field are doing, so that more people hear about it and see, hey, there's so much good things happening that can help the world going forward. Because
Absolutely.
the impact is huge. I mean, with your platform, if we look at that and really it scales globally, I mean, that will help so many like people saving lives and everything. It's huge.
Right. You know, what drives me is again that we went after these high hanging fruits, like the first salt taste enhancers, the first natural ingredients that enhance salt taste, and then one of the leading non-addictive pain drug candidates. And that we did that with no venture capital. And, you know, every single project we touched succeeded. So I feel like we scratched the surface. And if we now systematize this, you know, that potential is what drives me. And absolutely for money too. The money for me is the way to attract the best people, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
incentivize them and bring in the best of the best at all positions of the team.
Yeah. They're really looking forward to see it grow, and it's going to happen. I'm 100% sure. What are things that we have missed that we still should talk about?
When I think about what drives me, I take the technology as a given. I think anyone that starts a company must have some product or idea. Uh, but what I think is most important is the team, and it's an area that, you know, right out of grad school, I was not formally trained in running or managing a team, but I found that if you pair people, if the job function existed that you need in the company, and you can pair people with what they're interested to do and their skill sets, they just flourish. And for me, I love those aspects, getting recruiting talented people and then having a team effort.
Yeah. I mean, how did you do that in the first business? Was it the two of you, or did you add on people as well as part of it?
We one of I recruited one of my classmates from Rockefeller to join the company. We hired a first technician who was fantastic, and we also had a colleague who was our CEO, who was a former lawyer. And first, we got the first proof of concept before we expanded the company stepwise. We had a very systematic approach to interviews. We would, you know, thoroughly review everyone who applied, and when we would bring them in for interviews, each candidate would meet with 6 team members, short 20-minute meetings, and we would meet as a group to discuss all of them. And it was surprising, like even our receptionists would cycle. And for
Yes.
instance, there was once this candidate who was so rude to the receptionist, wouldn't even talk to the receptionist. And the receptionist shared that. And of course, the rest of us thought he was a great candidate. But when we heard this, of course, we wouldn't hire this person.
Yeah.
For some of our top scientists, I would go to one conference in particular, the biophysics conference, which is very academically very rigorous. And I would put a job ad in their career section. And I recruited 3 PhDs that way. They would send me their resumes. I would read it. And during the conference, set up meetings. And I would look for, again, a given that they knew that their technology, but I would look when you're talking with them, whose eyes light up, like who gets really excited about what they're doing. And and then those candidates I would invite back for meetings at the company, And if they were very senior, in addition to the, roundtable interviews, we would have them do a presentation of their work, sort of seminar form.
This will help you obviously now in the new company as well. Hugely.
Definitely. Yeah. And many of my colleagues, over time go to different companies, and they're kind of in the wings, keeping them
Yeah.
posted where, if and when I get funding, depending on the scale of the funding, I hope to pull some of them in.
It's going to happen 100%. I'm pretty sure.
Pretty.
Kambiz, thank you very much for spending your afternoon with me. It was a pleasure to interview you, and I think I'm definitely watching from afar, and hope we meet in person one day, because I think you have a technology that is changing lives and changing society, and with that, I think you do a big favor for a lot of people in the world, and I think that need to be seen and that need to be out there, and I hope I can do a little bit of support with that as well. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for spending your evening with me, and I really enjoyed our chat.